I lied that he hit me just to leave with my affair partner. Now he's playing the call in court. My name is Vanessa. And in the past few months, I've made stupid choices that have not only jeopardized my marriage of 20 years, but severed the relationship I once had with my kids. My parents and siblings won't talk to me either, not to mention my husband is disgusted by me. About 2 decades ago, Peter and I met in my mom's salon. I was in my last year at college and I had just come back for a break, so I helped my mom run things at the salon. He, on the other hand, looked like his sister had forced him to come with her to get a hair dye. We got talking somehow and he started coming more often, even when his hair didn't need any fixing. Eventually, we started dating, and after I graduated, we got married. After just a few months into our marriage, I conceived, and about a year later, we had our first son. He provided while I stayed home. Eventually, he opened a big salon for me, at my request, and things were going pretty smoothly there. I had loyal customers who would wait to travel all the way sometimes, just to get their hair done at my place. So business was going well, but Peter still provided. And when I had our first child, I rested a bit and handed the salon over to one of my girls to run. When our son was up to a year old, we got a nanny. My husband didn't have a problem with it. He had always been a supportive man. But soon after, we had another child, a girl this time, Leah. And that's where we stopped. We didn't want to have a lot of kids running around the house, but we still had sex. We were just careful not to produce a child from it. My life was perfect. My marriage was perfect for 20 whole years. And my kids were all grown up too. The first was around 19, and the other was 17 or so. Our son Daniel was in college, and our daughter was in her last year of high school. But that's when things started to fall apart. Leah was in her teenage prime. So she started acting like every typical teenage girl would, very rebellious and constantly annoyed by their moms. In my case, she even acted like I disgusted her sometimes. She hated it when I was around her friends. And she didn't even like me to pick her from school anymore. She complained that I was getting too old, but that got me annoyed. I was just in my early 40s. How old could that be? I told my husband about it, but he just gave me a scan and laughed it off. I took that way more seriously than he could have imagined. I started checking myself in the mirror more often, putting on some makeup even when I knew I'd still end up in the salon. And I started stylishly looking around myself all the time to see if any men were looking at me. But nothing worked. My husband didn't even try to stop me or anything. He always told me I looked good whenever I dressed all up like that, and then followed it up by asking what the occasion was. But I knew he was just trying to make me feel better with all that hype. One time, I was at the salon when I got a text from my old college friend. They were having another reunion. I was never really a fan of social gathering. All the other times, she'd been begging me to go, but I refused. But this time she didn't have to. I was willing even before she asked. I told my husband about it already, and he really didn't mind. He just told me to have fun, and joked that I should remember I have a man at home. Now I wished he just kept sending me that as a reminder. Maybe then I wouldn't have done what I did, or gone as far as I did. Now all I'm left with is regret. I wore a dress that was both short and revealed my breasts from the push-up bra I wore. I knew my husband would have something to say about it, and that Leah would have a lot to say, so I wore a kimono jacket to hide the dress. When I got there, the turn-up was even better than I imagined. The boys looked like they never aged at all. If anything, they only got better looking. I was just scouting the place and greeting old friends when he spotted me. Benjamin was an old college crush of mine. We dated for a bit in my early years at college, but I broke it off. My reason was I wasn't really feeling the vibe of the relationship anymore. But Ben didn't stop coming after me. He liked me up until the year we graduated. He smiled at me like he'd been waiting all those years just to catch me slipping. I felt a sharp stomach ache and suddenly felt very uncomfortable in the dress I wore, but he scanned my whole look and smiled again. Suddenly I felt so confident. He was a gentle man as always, moved close and took my hand in a kiss. I smiled back because I felt some kind of excitement in my guts, and I felt seen for the first time in a long time. We talked for a while, and he continuously flirted with me all the while, told me I looked the same and hadn't changed a bit from the last time we saw, and that my dress was stunning. I just managed to chuckle. But deep inside, I was jumping with joy. For the first time in a long time, I felt feminine again. We talked about our jobs, our lives, and generally just how we'd both been the past few years. But I didn't tell him I was married. I had taken off my wedding ring even before I left the house. He made some obvious passes at me. The brush of a hand, an arm on my shoulder, stuff like that. Then he asked me to go to dinner with him the next day. I said yes, even before he could finish the sentence. Now I'm worried I might have seemed a little too desperate. We danced after, and the night ended with him offering to walk me to my car. Then he gave me a gentle peck and hugged me so tight I literally felt my boobs push up. Then he whispered in my ear that he'd missed me. I was short of words, but that's all I went home thinking about. Someone I hadn't met for over a decade still remembered me, and even longed for me. I was flattered. When I got home, I found Peter dozing off in the living room with the TV on. I knew he wasn't there because he wanted to watch TV. It was just a means to stay awake and wait for me. When I unlocked the door, he jumped up, in shock at first. Then he asked me where I'd been, and I didn't answer my phone. That's when I checked my phone and saw about 7 missed calls from him. I had put the phone on silent when Ben and I started talking. I felt a little guilty that I ignored him because of another man, and even allowed myself to start feeling a bit for Ben. But I guess not guilty enough to tell him what happened. I just told him some female friends, and I decided to go out to another bar just to catch up. But I didn't stop there. I went ahead to tell him that they wanted to hang out tomorrow too, for dinner, and that I told them I'll be there. I'm a very terrible liar. He knew I wasn't telling the truth because I couldn't even look him in the eye, but he didn't say anything more, just nodded and led me to our bedroom. At that moment, I felt like a degree holder in lying. It was like all the guilt suddenly disappeared. I showered, crawled into bed, and even my husband just pulled me close like nothing had happened. The next day was the weekend, so Peter and the kids were home. Daniel was supposed to come home for a break that day, so I dressed in my normal clothes. But on my way to the restaurant, I entered a boutique, got fancier clothes, and trashed the former. Dinner with Ben was fun. He kept giving me compliments here and there. I literally felt butterflies in my stomach. I drank so much wine that I started to feel tipsy. Luckily, Benjamin's apartment was close by, so he took me there and laid me to rest. He didn't try to do anything or take advantage of the fact that I was drunk. But that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted more. So I got up from the bed he'd laid me on, staggered to the couch, and just grabbed him in a kiss. He tried to resist, but I was desperate and drunk, so I held on tight. Finally, he gave in and took the lead. We had sex, and he was so thorough with it, savoring every moment. You could tell he wanted that since the day we met at the reunion. I slept over that night and went home early the next morning with my head pounding. Ben offered to drive me home, but I insisted I'll go on my own with my car. I didn't want him to find out I had a husband and 2 full-grown kids. I tried to tiptoe into the house, but I froze when I locked eyes with Daniel. My heart skipped a beat for a moment. When he greeted me and asked how my night was, I wasn't sure how to respond. I just quickly muttered something I don't even remember and went up to my room. Luckily, my husband had gone for a workout, so I had time to think of a convincing lie as to why I didn't return home the previous night. But surprisingly, when he got home, he didn't ask any questions. Just said he called me a number of times, but I didn't pick up. I hadn't checked my phone since, so there was no prearranged response for that. So I stuttered and said something about losing track of time while spending time with my friends in a bar. Then he reminded me that I said we were going to a dinner, but I was talking about a bar instead at the moment. There were no words in my mouth. Luckily, Leah came in then and asked her dad for help, but she didn't even look at me. It was like I was invisible to her. Only when her dad was walking out did she mutter a good morning to me. Either way, she saved me from having to cook up another lie. The rest of the day, Ben kept texting me, saying stuff like, "Thanks, had a great night, and sex with you hasn't changed. Exquisite as always. Just flirty stuff." But they really got to me. I felt like a teenager again. I replied to his messages and told him I felt the same. We kept texting, and in the subsequent days, I found myself checking my phone more often than usual. Even the girls at my shop noticed. I stopped paying attention to customers. One time, I almost burnt a customer's scalp while stretching her hair because I was on a phone call with Benjamin at the same time. Sometimes I'd shout if a customer complained too much, so I started losing customers. I was rarely at the salon because most times I'd leave home telling my husband I was going to the salon while I just drove straight to Ben. Sex between us became a daily routine. And of course, I didn't enjoy sex with my Peter anymore. His style just seemed too old-fashioned to me, so I avoided it. I'd tell him I was too exhausted from the salon or just find a random excuse to sleep once I got back. I told Ben where my salon was, not because I wanted him to come around. It just slipped out when we were talking one time. But one day, he showed up at the front door holding flowers. My girls already knew my husband, and it was a small neighborhood, so everyone knew everyone. I didn't know whether to run or hide when I saw Benjamin standing there. He kept smiling at me and waving from outside, asking if he could come in. All eyes were on me. I quickly went out and took him to the side, away from people's glares, but that didn't help. Passers-by started pointing fingers. I turned and told Ben he couldn't just come to my salon like that. He was confused and asked why. He also added that we were dating after all, so he felt he could. Dating. The word gave me mixed feelings. It stung me, but at the same time melted my heart. It was a strange and unexplainable feeling. But before I could even process that, I saw Peter's car park at the salon too. I knew I was doomed. I told Ben to wait as I quickly rushed to him. My head was spinning. He came with flowers too. For a moment, I thought I was a movie character or something. He then smiled and said he knew I'd been working so hard the past few days, so he just wanted to treat me to dinner. Just the two of us. When he mentioned working so hard, I saw the look my girls gave me. They knew I'd barely even been around, but I managed to smile and asked him to give me a moment. I was about to go out and try to persuade Ben to leave when I saw him at the door, looking at me with eyes that felt so betrayed. He then asked me who that was. I didn't know how to answer that because my husband was obviously about to ask the same thing about him. One of the girls then shouted, "That's her husband," and the rest of the people, even the customers, laughed. Ben got visibly angry, threw the flowers to the floor, and stormed out. I tried to follow him, but he didn't want to talk to me. My eyes were teary, only to go back inside and meet my husband, also waiting for some explanation. I didn't have any to give him. I closed the shop early that day, and we both went home in our separate cars. When we got home, we had a heated argument. He was asking questions I didn't want to answer, and I was still thinking about how hurt Ben must have been and how to make it up to him. The kids were watching from the stairs all along, so he stormed out and didn't return that night. The kids didn't speak to me for the whole night, not even the next morning. I kept pacing in the living room, thinking of what to do, because soon enough, people were going to start talking. I got an idea. I had to think about it a long time, but in my head, it wasn't going to cause anyone harm. It was meant to just savor the situation somehow. I'd use that as an excuse to divorce him and be with Benjamin. As for the kids, I could take our son, while he took Leah. It was all sorted out in my head. Benjamin still wasn't picking up the phone, but I'd hoped after I told him what I'd planned to, he'd come around again. So early the next morning, I called my sister, told her my husband had hit me the night before due to a petty argument. She was so mad, and when we were done talking, calls just started coming in, people asking if I was all right. My dad, my mom, even cousins I hadn't spoken to in a long time. My sister told me to inform her anytime my husband came around, so she'd pay him a visit, but I didn't know she'd be coming with company. Later that day, he came back home. He attempted to kick me out of the house while he stayed with the kids. I called my sister immediately and told her he was around and even planned on throwing me out. In a matter of minutes, there was a knock at the door. Unfortunately for my husband, it was at the same moment he was throwing my things out of the bedroom. I rushed and opened the door only to see my sister and mom with 2 cops behind them. My mom rushed to me and took me in her arms, and my sister pointed my husband to the cops, and in the blink of an eye they took him out. Arrested for domestic violence, they said. My husband turned and gave me a look of disbelief. My kids kept yelling and struggling with the officers not to take their father away. Leah's face was dripping in tears while Daniel just yelled and asked why I would do such a thing. I tried to reason with my mom, but she said my husband was being taken to a place meant for people like him. I was devastated. I barely said a word. Things had escalated. It wasn't part of my plan. I had already texted Ben earlier and tried to explain to him with some lies. So he called me back and said he was so sorry and passed by the salon, but it was locked. He had heard what happened from the strangers he saw around. Word travels fast in my neighborhood. He asked when and where the hearing would be, and I told him. I had visited the station, and they asked for any evidence. I then showed them the cut I had made on myself with a kitchen knife. The hearing was scheduled for the next 24 hours. That night I couldn't sleep. My kids hadn't spoken to me the whole of the day, and my conscience wouldn't let me rest. I called my sister, tried to de-escalate the situation, see if I could come up with a solution. I told her he didn't hit me that hard and that I'd be fine, that there was no use taking it to court, but she would hear nothing of it. I told her the kids needed their father, but she said he was no good to them if he kept hitting everyone in the house. I had no choice but to tell her the truth. I told her about the cheating, the argument, the lie, and the reason for the lie. She asked me to repeat what I said because she couldn't believe it. I cried and told her I was sorry. I didn't know it would get that bad, and that Peter would never ever lay his hand on me, ever. She didn't respond to me, just ended the call. I tried calling her back, but it went straight to voicemail. The next day, I was nervous. It was almost time for the hearing, and my sister still wouldn't talk to me. Finally, she called. She said everything was arranged and we couldn't just cancel like that. So she told me to go to that hearing and confess. Let everyone know the truth. My mind went blank. I didn't want everyone to paint me as a bad person, including my kids. I just didn't want Peter in jail, that's all. But I had no idea what was waiting for me in court. The hearing began, and I couldn't bring myself to tell everyone seated that it was all a lie. My sister kept giving me glances, but I couldn't do it. My mom wouldn't even look at me. I kept going to the bathroom and back. But then when I came back the final time, resolved to tell the truth, everywhere was noisy, and then I saw Leah's phone with the judge. I was confused at first, but I quickly put 5 and 6 together. Saw Leah's phone with Peter's lawyer. I don't know how I didn't notice earlier that Leah must have gotten suspicious and had kept an eye on me. She'd always loved her dad more than me. The judge told me she had a recording that could change the outcome of the trial. She then asked me if I had anything to say before she played it. I just muttered, "I'm sorry." Everyone in the courtroom gasped in shock. I turned and looked at Leah, but she looked away. My mom and sister started crying. The judge then played the recording, and people started giving me disgusting looks. I started crying. She then asked who was on the other side of the phone. My sister raised her hand in shame. The judge asked if we really had such a conversation. She nodded. Benjamin was in the courtroom too. He looked so disappointed and angry when he stormed out. I was left crying. And now, my family won't speak to me. My husband has filed a divorce already. He wants full custody of both kids. His excuse is I never have time for them. And they both don't want to be with me anyway. And Daniel, he's never been this mad at me before. I don't know if such damage can ever be repaired. Also, everyone in the neighborhood has heard. No one wants to visit my salon anymore. I don't make enough money to properly pay my apprentices anymore, so they've all gone. And I'm still juggling between paying rent and the $2,000 fine as punishment from the court.